Welcome back to Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers, the podcast devoted to exploring the frontiers of psychedelic medicine and what it takes to cultivate a healthy mind, body, and spirit. I'm Dr. Steve Thayer, and today my co-host Dr. Reid Robison and I revisit the concepts of motivation, drive, goal setting, and living a self-actualized life. We've had a couple episodes that have sort of touched on these topics, but we thought because we love these topics, we might revisit them. So this is one of those episodes where I like to blindside Reid with vulnerable, self-reflective questions. So it gets kind of juicy today, people. Hopefully you enjoy that. We even talk about enlightened BDSM practitioners. So as I like to say, brace yourselves. As always, I would be eternally grateful if you went to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, wherever you listen, and you gave us a 5-star review if that's available on that platform, or liked or commented. We love hearing from you folks. It'll help me, right? So I can finally sleep soundly at night, knowing that this podcast has earned the approval of its lovely listeners. All right, without further ado, I bring you the episode. Setting goals is stupid. Or at least that is what a mentor of mine growing up tried to teach me. That goal setting was dumb. It was a waste of time. It was amoral.
Amoral.
Not even amoral. Immoral. That it was unenlightened. And it led to striving. It led to setting oneself up for disappointment and failure and discouragement. And that it tended to engender an impure source of motivation. And instead, this mentor explained that in order to motivate myself to achieve, I ought to be motivated by pure love. I ought to be motivated by the desire to contribute to something greater than myself. And that goal setting too often was about self-aggrandizement and about checking off boxes as a way of proving your worthiness. So there were some nuggets in there that I still think about today. But ironically, this person, this mentor of mine, was also fairly goal-driven. So I don't know if they were trying to spare me from the suffering that they experienced, but yeah, I had a lot of early influences around goal setting, that I still to this day try to grapple with. Now having become a clinical psychologist, having studied human motivation and how people change and how people become satisfied or dissatisfied with where they are in life, I don't know that setting goals is a bad idea, but I think there are probably healthy ways to relate to goal setting and achievement and motivation and drive, and probably unhealthy ways. So I thought it might be fun to just sort of play around with this topic today of drive, goal setting, motivation, and the like.
Yeah, I like this little debate because I see both sides of the coin, and it's one of those kind of dialectics that, I consider both sides of this to be true as well. One of the paradoxes of life, that balance between effort and ease and striving and non-attachment. So yeah, I kind of also see it like intention setting in psychedelic therapy, where you plant a seed, you set your sights on it, but then you let go of expectations and attachment to outcome. Even though goals will require a little more of that persistent effort over time, and we can talk about those distinctions.
Yeah, I think those distinctions are important because I like your sort of connecting goals to intentions for psychedelic therapy. One of the ways we describe those intentions, in addition to it planting a seed, is a loosely held hope. And some people might argue that with respect to goals, that if you hold on to those too loosely, then you won't achieve them. You have to really strive and hustle and sacrifice everything to accomplish those goals. But there also has been this sort of anti-hustle movement that I've noticed, that people are, especially young people, are rebelling against the idea that you have to sort of fillet yourself on the altar of productivity in order to achieve the goals that you have for your life.
One of my one of my favorite books by Herman Hesse, Siddhartha. Have you read that? Um,
No.
there's a quote in there that I think strikes me as eerily similar to what your mentor was talking about. And Herman Hesse in this book, it's Siddhartha speaking, aka like it's another take on the Buddha story. But it says when someone is
Hmm.
seeking, it happens quite easily that he only sees the thing that he is seeking, that he is unable to find anything, unable to absorb anything, because he is only thinking of the thing he is seeking, because he has a goal, because he is obsessed with his goal. Seeking means to have a goal, but finding means to be free, to be receptive, to have no goal. You, O worthy one, are perhaps indeed a seeker, for in striving towards your goal, you do not see many things that are under your nose.
Mm. So striving toward the goal prevents you from seeing what is there, seeing what else is on the path.
And this can be actually quite helpful if we were just talking about the science of goal setting and not the
Hmm.
like the spirituality of goal setting as well, or these also psycho-spiritual transpersonal viewpoints of the importance of being here now and not
Hmm.
making life all about goal-oriented behavior and outcomes. Then we would see that goals help us ignore the obstacles so we can plow through them. And there is a science of goal setting, and there is evidence to guide how we might want to most effectively accomplish something. And those are important in our modern. That's important in our modern day life if that doesn't become what life is all about.
Right. Especially once you climb Maslow's hierarchy.
Hmm.
It's hard to talk about goals and motivation without talking about Maslow. Um, and I've been talking a lot about this book, Transcend, by Scott Kaufman, psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman,
Hmm.
um, where I learned a lot of things about Maslow reading his book that I didn't know before, like the idea that the pyramid was not a Maslow's idea. That was somebody else who put his hierarchy of needs in pyramid form. Um, but yeah, it wasn't Maslow's idea. And the idea that there is something beyond self actualization. We can get into it, or you could just go read the book, folks. And that is transcendence. But yeah, we have to meet certain basic needs uh, before we can really move on to those more, uh, transcendent needs.
Yeah, I like that. I like looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs when plotted as a pyramid. I know that's not how he initially described it, but I like looking
Mhm.
at it as the first four layers of that pyramid, like the physiological, the safety, even the love and belonging, even the esteem. Those ones are more needs that are unmet and we're motivated to get
Mhm.
met. But that
Mhm.
higher, that top of the pyramid, um, you could look at as your higher self needs. That's when there's an inborn desire to become all one can be or to become self actualized. And you're more fueled by these intrinsic, values of contributing and continuing to grow.
That's a really useful distinction between those deficiency needs versus being
Yeah.
needs or growth promoting needs, right? Being and becoming. In fact, I have a quote here from Maslow about this. So, Abraham Maslow says, even if all these basic needs are satisfied, we may still often, if not always, expect that a new discontent and restlessness will soon develop, unless the individual is doing what he individually is fitted for. A musician must make music, an artist must paint, a poet must write, if he is to be ultimately at peace with himself. What a man can be, he must be. He must be true to his own nature. This need we may call self actualization. It refers to a man's desire for self fulfillment, namely to the tendency for him to become actualized in what he is potentially.
Yeah.
This tendency might be phrased as the desire to become more and more what one idiosyncratically is. to become everything that one is capable of becoming.
Hmm. And I think I love that. And I think it's a risk that we all face of getting stuck in the lower rungs. Understandably, life is tough. We all struggle, and we all have times when it's impossible to even think about getting to those higher order needs. But even remembering some of it in times of struggle can help us like transcend the struggle. Like, I like to ask people I'm working with, like, when's the last time you mastered something new? Most people haven't for a
Hmm.
while because they're stuck in fixing some of those lower rung things and putting out fires on working out where do I belong, or like just dealing with uncertainty that's crippling from an anxiety standpoint, or like asking yourself, what are you contributing to the world, to your relationships, to your communities, to your surroundings, to the earth? Because I do believe that it can be done simultaneously, even when we have work to do on the lower rungs. And Maslow even qualified that. He was like, you know, I know my earlier writings felt like these were sequential steps you have to go through, but he later made a disclaimer in his life that they don't all have to be done for you to touch into self-actualization.
Right. Yeah, and you'll dip down, right? You'll be in self-actualization mode, in being mode, and then something will happen, right? A loved one will abandon you, or you'll have a breakup or something like that, and then you're back down to love and belonging and trying to solve the equation at that level. Or you'll get rejected in some other way. You'll lose a job, and your esteem needs and your safety needs will all of a sudden be unmet. You'll need to dip down back there. But I think self-actualization, this being, is also like a worldview that I think people can have, even if they are still busy about the business of meeting those deficiency needs.
Hmm.
I don't know. What do you think? This is just sort of me thinking out loud about this.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that meaning making, that self-actualization work, that growth and contribution, is one of the secret weapons we have at our disposal to get to feel less stuck and mired down by all the demands of day-to-day life that aren't going away necessarily. Or even
Hmm.
even the things like the uncertainty. COVID shows up, and all of a sudden, um, people get an anxiety button push they didn't know they had, understandably. Or
Hmm.
you lose a job, or you lose some friends. You start to question belonging and other things like that. Um, it's a cycle of learning and growing, and keeping the transpersonal, or the tip of Maslow's pyramid at in mind through the process, makes it all feel more meaningful and manageable.
Yeah. So my thinking out loud was prompted by some points that Kaufman makes in his book Transcend about this hierarchy. Uh, and I wrote down a quote from his book about it. So Kaufman says, considering the writings of Maslow and modern psychological research relating to self actualization and the heights of human nature, I propose the following definition of healthy transcendence. Healthy transcendence is an emergent phenomenon resulting from the harmonious integration of one's whole self in the service of cultivating the good society. So you're integrating your whole self, faults and all, desire to meet deficiency needs and self actualization motives with the good of society. So, it's not just about you. It's not just about you and being. It's about you and being in the context of greater society for a greater purpose, the greater whole. So, in a way, you transcend those deficiency needs, at least being stuck there, and maybe even transcending self actualization.
Yeah, and that's what the process is about, right? Moving up this pyramid, even though it's not a linear, stepwise, absolute black and white process.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, if you look at it from another perspective, like let's look at in Native American cultures, it's a circle, like a medicine wheel, um, that guides some of one's progress or vision quest. Like, both referring to the legendary journey an individual might take as they come of age, but also and initiate into adulthood, but also something I believe can be referenced and used, like the medicine wheel idea as a mandala to, like, repeatedly remember who we are and where we're going, like a compass, where, a medicine wheel, just to rewind a bit, might have four directions. And, there might be a direction, an animal. It could represent domains of yourself, like mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. And you mark the goal is to, like, reconnect with your true nature. And these like directions on a compass, you might begin in the south, the serpent path, where you go to, like, shed the things of the past you're holding on to. And in the north, it might be like a dragon path to discover wisdom from the divine or the ancestors. And then an eagle path of the east to take a flight, like metaphorical flight, back to one's home and exercise these lessons in one's life. So yeah, I think, like, you can use these kind of things, whatever your framework is. If you're stuck in your head, um, you can go back to this, or you can burn some sage, come back to the now. Your physical is out of whack. Um, we have tools for that, but looking at the big picture, the balance, and keeping the eye on this, like, this really meaningful piece of the pyramid of self-actualization. And I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever as a disclaimer.
It did. I'll tell you what it made me think of is this sort of expand and contract that I think is important in life as you laser focus maybe on a goal that you've set. But then every once in a while, then expanding, taking that, coming home to yourself, taking that 50,000-foot view. Is this still the North Star I want to be following?
Yeah.
And you don't want to get stuck in self-questioning necessarily, but you also don't want to be blindly following something that you think is supposed to be the purpose of your life or that will give you happiness, only to discover 10 years later that you're miserable.
Yeah. And, one thing that I need to get on a little soapbox here for a sec, not even a soapbox. I need to, like, confess on behalf of the medical profession that, our Western medical view is a bit messed up, right? In our modern
Mm,
worldview, we have this medical model of, like, antagonism, or like doctor fighting illness to eradicate it. But, like, if you look at what we're talking about, like, see, in Native American cultures, a doctor, medicine woman, medicine person forms a relationship with the whole world, the life world of the individual, not just sickness, but harmony, lack of harmony, harmony, disease, meaning what's out of harmony. And these processes then bring one back to one's true nature, like a remembering what it really means to be human, like remembering, what really matters, like how we show up in the world, how we treat one another, how our place in nature, remembering that, like, I don't know, the infinity of a soul. And parts may come and go, illnesses come and go, struggles come and go, but this place beyond all that, beyond the struggles, beyond this human realm, where we dream, we meditate, we have these awakenings, these spiritual inspirations. I think that's how our consciousness really, like, grows, evolves, remembers its place in the universe.
yeah, in harmony with, other humans, but the world, with whatever divine or source or God energy you believe in. Yeah, you got me thinking here, Reed. The what it means to be human was a phrase you used. So to be what it means to be human is to be in harmony with these things. And our Western individualistic, like modern Western
Hmm.
individualism is great in some ways, but maybe has led to a disconnect from what we ought to be in harmony with.
Yeah, and I know we've meandered away from this how to set goals and what is motivation. But I think it's an important big picture perspective to take as we go into that delicate territory of, yeah, how to set goals well, um, with the disclaimer that it's not the goals that are most important, or we need to check the goals with our real values.
Well, I will go ahead and make the claim that this meander is not even a meander, that this is precisely where you need to start when you're making goals, is with your values, like you just said. Otherwise, you're sort of off on a fool's errand, or what will ultimately become a fool's errand. Not that you can't learn from that thing, and not that you have to totally know who you are and where you want to go in life before you set goals. Life is a never ending experiment. You're never totally finished. Um, so yeah, I think even, Kaufman even says this. I wrote this part down from his book too, that his view of transcendence is not about leaving any parts of ourselves or anyone else behind or singularly rising above the rest of humanity. Healthy transcendence is not about being outside of the whole or feeling superior to the whole, but being a harmonious part of the whole of human existence, just like you were saying, Reed. He also says it's also not a level any human ever actually
Mhm.
achieves, but is a North Star for all of humanity. In a
Yeah.
nutshell, healthy transcendence involves harnessing all that you are in the service of realizing the best version of yourself so that you can help raise the bar for the whole of humanity.
So enlightenment isn't attainable.
I don't know that it's a box that you check. I think, like we've talked about before, it's like tuning an instrument.
Yeah.
If you've ever had a musical, especially a string instrument, it is its nature to fall out of tune. And so you have to deliberately bring it back into tune so it stays in harmony and you can create beautiful music with it. And I feel like human beings are often the same way. We are subject to entropy and we fall out of tune. We have so many competing motives and drives, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this topic on this episode in this episode is sometimes we have drives and motives that are a bit misguided and out of harmony with the things you've talked about,
Yep.
and it can lead to suffering.
Yep. And I like the metaphor. I have this ukulele in the other room that is now finally starting to keep its tune for more than just a few days, because when I first acquired it, these new strings just would fall out of tune so fast. But it's another
Yeah.
interesting thing to think about as we train ourselves and practice living in accordance with our values. We lay down those tracks, those ruts in a road, to make it more natural and easy to follow that same path, even though we will slip out of it now and then, like you said.
I'm going to take this ukulele metaphor and run with it probably too far. So,
Hmm.
I've said in the podcast before that I played the cello in high school. And when you get new strings on a big string instrument like the cello, you put it in tune. And there are a couple of ways it can fall out of tune. One is the pegs will slip a bit, but the other is the new strings will stretch. So, when you're in the process of trying to develop a new skill set or really embody a new character trait, you'll put those pegs or those strings in tune, but because they're new, they'll stretch. You'll go back to your old ways. And it requires continual, repetitive retuning before, like you said, with ruts, before the strings are more comfortable being in that stretched position. And then they'll fall out of tune a lot less often. So, a funny way of saying, like we talked about in our habits episode recently, that when you're setting goals to create a new skill, develop a new skill, or create a new character trait, it takes repetition, but over time it'll settle in.
Yeah, and that this is where some of the like neuroscience of motivation and goal setting comes into play, or even like the stages of change trans theoretical model by Prochaska and Di Clemente that
Mhm.
has been around for decades, and we reference sometime, because like that as an example was developed when looking at people who want to quit smoking, and who does and doesn't, and what are the differences. And it is about one's readiness, like where you are in this stage of change model, um, your not just recognition of the problem, but readiness to change and intention and emotional connection to the target. Um, and then you can use some of these like habit hacks and motivation hacks to get out of these stuck places that aren't in accordance with your values, for example.
Right. I like that readiness point because to me it calls to my mind uh, compassion, self
Yeah.
compassion, because we can sometimes be really hard on ourselves for not accomplishing our goals. I mean, how many New Year's resolutions have I beat myself up for not sticking with? And it might just be I made bad goals, bad in the sense that I wasn't ready, or I didn't resource myself well enough, or they weren't really in alignment with where I was trying to head. But yeah, that readiness idea is a good way to remind oneself that it is okay. It's okay if you fall short and you might just, maybe you weren't ready.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, if we were to look at ourselves through this lens of those 6 stages of change, you enter at the pre-contemplation stage. Like at the beginning, you're not really fully acknowledging that there's a problem behavior that needs to be changed. And then you acknowledge there's a problem, but you're not totally ready or sure you want to make it. And then there's this whole phase of preparation, determination. You're getting ready to change, and then there's the action, like changing behavior, and that can take a lot of effort. So it's good you got to actually be in that stage for real. And then there's still the maintenance, and there's still what do you do with relapses, because like growth recovery is not a linear trajectory.
Right. Not a linear trajectory. And that can be frustrating, I think, for a lot of us. Certainly was for me when I was younger and now, to a certain degree. I just expected to just to progress in a stepwise fashion, a
Mhm,
very linear stepwise fashion. Part of that I think that is a result of just the system I was plugged into, being born in America with access to the public school system where you have grades and you have rubrics and you achieve these grades and grade 1, 2, 3, 4, then get to college and it's like, oh, all I got to do is pass these classes and then I level up. Almost there's like a gamification aspect to it that really
mhm,
appealed to me because I was and am a video game player, um, but ultimately those games end. I got about as much schooling as was reasonable for a human being. I mean, I got a PhD and
mhm,
then got a license and then got a job, but then what? And a lot of people just will continue to accumulate levels, so to speak. Well, now I have this
mhm,
certification or this postdoc or whatever. Um, but yeah, every once in a while, I just take a breath, step back. What is the epping point? Why am I doing all this stuff?
mhm.
Back to the North Star idea.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this the other day, and I even did this with a client or some clients the other week, is a values card sorting task. I think
Mm,
we each have different but probably similar approaches to doing this, but like having a list of values on cards. I did it with a family who flew into town for a course of like family ketamine therapy. And I just felt
mhm.
like it would be a good um, perspective to start the week with, and like checking in with our values, what's most important to us as individuals and as a family unit, for example, and opening up that process to one another in the spirit of vulnerability and getting to know each other. Um, and I do that personally on a regular basis, just revisiting this because we as humans change. We shed our skins and are on this nonlinear growth trajectory.
Right. So I'm curious, Reed, if you'd be willing to share. You mentioned using that value sort and returning to value evaluation for yourself. As you look back on your life, what have been the driving forces for you? Like, you're an accomplished guy. You've accomplished a lot of things. What drives you? What motivates you?
Yeah, and it's such an interesting question. Is why I chuckle, because um, there are these stages of life of where we're more in a striving mode and more in a kind of contributing, giving back, generosity mode. When we're more
Hmm.
concerned about what other people think or the appearance of things or our accomplishments, and when we're less so. And I think my life so far has followed a similar path to many, where I start out with this gung ho spirit of I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to get, like you said, all these degrees. I did an MD and threw on an MBA on top of it at the exact same time with no extra time by doing night school. I was taking 50 credits at once, and then I'm in
Mm.
residency, and I'm like, wait a second, I can get a fellowship done. I could do a postdoc too. And like, I almost got a PhD, but made myself stop because it was getting silly. Of That goal-oriented behavior became almost like you know, a trap. But seeing the values shift over time is even shifting from seeing this value of contributing, making a contribution to, from big impact moonshots I may have had before, to like starting close to home, or starting with like work on myself, work on the relationships with those around me, and what I can do on a daily basis with my environment, and extending it outward from there. But I think in general, I've let go of a lot of the need for acceptance, need for like the achievement. Maybe it's all the psychedelic ceremonies that have dissolved some default mode pieces of my ego that I'm thankful for.
Mm. I appreciate you opening up about it. I think, a lot of the things we could cover in an episode like this are easily Googleable. Like we could go over SMART goals,
Yeah,
how to set goals, the neuroscience of motivation. Check out Andrew Huberman. He's got a lot of great
yeah.
stuff on that. Um, but what people can't Google is, why did Reid Robison get an MD and an MBA,
Hmm.
right? Um, and to me, that's I don't know. That's why I want to listen to a podcast. Is I want to feel validated. I want to listen to somebody I look up to, somebody who's accomplished incredible things, and see their humanity. So I appreciate you letting me pry it out of
Yeah,
you.
no, I appreciate the question too. It reminds me of like even my first ever ayahuasca journey. Like, go down to the jungle seeking something. Like, I want to find
Mm.
tools for the patients I work with. And sure, wanted to check a box of like, try this crazy medicine, wanted some new added awareness, perspective, self-understanding. Um, but going into these things with, even with a goal that got me there, um, when there's a spirit of openness and curiosity, like, I didn't, you know, I got a lot more than I was seeking, right? I wasn't looking for
Mhm.
God or answers to spirituality in the jungle. But like, I was essentially found by like a newfound spirituality. Like, you could even say that like this God, however you want to define it, found me a bit lost, and asking these questions that I didn't even know I had, like these existential questions about who the hell am I, or what am I, or what is my place in this vast universe? And then
Mhm.
these like answers that are also surprising, and I didn't previously utter, like, wow, there is an infinity and we're all part of it, or spirit does exist, even if I can't freaking measure it.
Yeah. To me, that's been one of the incredibly valuable aspects of psychedelic experiences. Um, Helping me gain perspective on what has motivated me up until now. And I'm grateful for my ego. I'm grateful for the insecurities that I have, that have in large part been responsible for what I have been able to accomplish in my life. That's been a lot of my especially a lot of my motivation fuel early in life was I don't like me, and so I need to find a way to make sure other people like me. So
Mhm.
I become a really good listener, or I become, I develop my sense of humor, make people laugh,
Mhm.
or I impress people, right, by, developing all these skills. And I think I feel similar to you in that at this point in my life, and hopefully I have a lot more life to live, I'm starting to care a little less
Mhm.
about how I'm perceived, starting to care a little bit less about whether or not people accept me, and starting to care a little bit more about giving. And I've always been a giver, but
Yeah.
to me, that's a lot of why I love doing this podcast. I want people to have free access to helpful information. I have benefited so much from free access to helpful information. So, yeah, I mean, I've got goals for the podcast. I've got goals for my professional life. I have goals for my personal life with my spouse and as a father and as a human being in a community. Um, I've got goals related to making sure this psychedelic renaissance, to whatever degree I can influence it, my tiny little sphere, um, is really, really, it's unperturbed, unstopped, and very, very helpful.
Yeah, I love that. And what we were talking about earlier with Maslow's hierarchy and the pyramid is coming back full circle. As I'm remembering that first ayahuasca experience as an example, going in like externally motivated to seek some things, but coming out like with this like more intrinsic sense of peace, like knowing, oh, everything is as it should be, or like I felt like a new like connection to self, to other souls, and saw like some of the ways that our striving gets in the way of our humanity or our connection. Like how, what about nature and savoring the food and remember where it comes from? What about like going to sleep and waking up with the rhythms of the earth rather than like a 75 hard, like get to the gym at 4 a.m. at all costs and ignore what your body's telling you, or that there's a more
Mhm,
natural
mhm.
way, and that, like something was awakened or at least remembered that it's peaceful to get back to that place, that harmony with ourselves and each other and our surroundings, our purpose, our life.
Yeah, it's making me think of our episode on the middle way or the middle path, and we did have an episode on purpose too. Um, Makes me wonder, we've talked a lot about equanimity, the ability to just sort of be calm and
Hmm.
composed and have evenness of temper no matter what's going on around you. And what allows a person to be equanimous? It's a connection, I think, to this knowing, an awakening, a remembering that no matter what, all things are as they are and we'll be okay. And will be okay doesn't mean you're going to be safe. Doesn't mean you're not going to be harmed or that you won't be taken advantage of or exploited or killed. Or it doesn't mean life will always proceed without suffering. That's not at all what it means. It means, I mean, I don't know what the freaking purpose of life is, but it means that our nature is to be at peace to some extent if we surrender to it.
So you've just hit a funny button in me, just a distracting thought about equanimity, because I really love this concept of
Hmm.
I'm just thinking of the different ways we can awaken and like grow as humans, like spiritually grow. And I remember once being struck by these two different paths of spiritual, say, progress. One, like if you were to map it out on a mathematical equation, bear with me, I know this is a weird tangent, but let's say spiritual purification equals pain times equanimity, or spiritual purification equals pleasure times equanimity. So you can follow a path of pleasure, of like ecstatic bliss, enlightenment, music, tantric practices, um, and and learn and grow and say purify spiritually, you can also follow that old asceticism, like on the extremes. You got like self-flagellation, or
Hmm.
or just like the extreme discipline, the pain. And when you have equanimity in with it, then it can result in that getting somewhere. But the equanimity is this attitude of like, yeah, of going with the flow of whatever it is, whether it's pleasure or pain, and not getting caught up by it, swept up by it entirely, attached to it.
You know, speaking of weird buttons to be pressed, what you just described pressed a weird button in my mind. Something I'm curious about and I want to learn more about is I've started to meet people who are into like bondage and the riding the lightning between pain and pleasure in a sexual
Hmm.
context. And so this equanimity, we have extreme ecstasy, you have intense pain, and there's a stereotype that people who are into S&M are all traumatized and they're just reliving their trauma. But when you actually meet people from this community, or the kink community or whatever, the bondage community, you find that a lot of them are like some of the most enlightened, enlightened and calm and equanimous people you'll ever meet. And so I don't know what. Again, I'm not totally prepared to talk about this because I'm still learning. Um, but it's an interesting observation of people who have found ways to play around in
Yeah.
both the yin yang of pain and pleasure.
So, I think it's a really uh, it's a really good another way to look at what I was trying to like deconstruct mathematically and describe, is that pain is often there to like shake us awake, or it can be a great teacher. And other humans, it's only through our relationships with others that unresolved suffering can be transformed into loving connection. And as we go through life, we don't talk to each other in our true natures for the most part. We're talking to each other's like projections, and um, your perception of me has a reflection of you in it, and my reaction to you
Hmm.
is, you know, through the lens of like an awareness of me. So uh, in that like kind of existential kink world, there's probably an equanimity and an appreciation and understanding about the pleasure and pain both being valuable paths for kind of waking up and understanding ourselves and each other.
Right, right. Well, Reed, we could talk about this topic forever, I feel like, but I actually have a meeting to prepare for. So, any final thoughts on drive, motivation, actualization, values, or goal setting?
Well, let's see how to sum it up. Oh, my favorite definition of success is from Earl
Mm,
Nightingale. That I know it's presented in a lot of the goal setting literature and striving worlds, but I love this. He said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. It's not attaining it. It's the stepwise progress, even nonlinear, towards it.
hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's. I was about to say, there's nothing so depressing as accomplishing a goal. People often experience this sort of letdown. You accomplish your goal, you feel great for a little while, and then there's a letdown afterward. How many billionaires do we know that are also really miserable? So I like that. I like that
And
quote.
making errors is actually good for our brains. It's like, in the spirit of neuroplasticity, the errors actually make the brain
Hmm.
more plastic, and therefore, like, the state of frustration is a key ingredient to learning.
Yeah, we're adaptation machines, and we need something to adapt to. So we need those errors to teach ourselves.
Well, how about you, Steve? Any last insights, words of wisdom on this meandering topic?
Well, to put a bookend on it, I started by talking about this mentor of mine that was sort of frightening me away from setting goals. And I do feel like there was wisdom in there. And I feel like we've sort of meandered around some of those points of wisdom. But I will say, now in my life, I feel like I have a better relationship to goal and achievement. But like I said before, it will never end. This journey that I'm on to find ways to feel at peace inside my own soul, inside my own body, inside my own mind, and also, a la Abraham Maslow, transcend and self-actualize and just be, so that I can contribute and help. So, how's that for a word salad of of concluding thoughts?
So I was just going to say that your comment, I think, completes this circle back to this idea of goal setting. Maybe is more like intention setting, or finding what's true for
Mhm.
you at the core of your heart and connecting with it, bringing awareness to it so it's activated and it can emerge into the light. Like, even like the Tony Robbins quotes about goal setting, it's more like to make the invisible visible, or like to birth this intention into real life, by using awareness as the bridge and your actions to bring it out into the real physical world. So anyway, I'll leave it at that because you have a meeting to go to.
I do. Well, thank you, as always, Reed. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thank you, dear listener, for listening. It means a lot to me. Psychedelic Therapy Frontiers is brought to you by Novamind, a mental health company that specializes in psychedelic medicine and research. You can learn more about Novamind's mission to increase access to legal, safe, and evidence-based psychedelic medicine at novamind.ca. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're using to listen or watch. Also, if you're feeling generous today, please leave us a glowing review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you like to listen. If you'd like to reach out to us with questions, suggestions, scathing criticisms, etc., please email us at psychfrontiers@novamind.ca. Thanks again. The content of this podcast does not constitute medical advice or mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you believe you are in need of mental health treatment.